Hello and welcome to the North Coast Journal Preview. This is a show where we take a look at what's coming in the current edition of the North Coast Journal. I am your host, Tanya Shrum, and we are joined by North Coast Journal's managing editor, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. Welcome!
Hey, Tanya.
Hey! Another glorious week.
That it is. Are we doing fall yet? I don't understand. What are we doing?
It definitely feels like fall's jumping the gun a little bit, but it all works with my thought process that the moment the last sparkler goes out, it's Halloween.
Wow, that's early. Okay, so the Halloween costumes are already at Costco.
Yeah.
Too soon, guys. Too soon. Right now, this season is for people who are making their own crazy costume, okay? This is not the season for going out and buying the pre-muscled Superman suit. This is the time when those of us who DIY it shine. I see you people recycling wigs.
That's right.
Yes, and also, I know we normally do Humboldt Summer into October.
Right, which is still what I'm expecting to occur.
I want it to happen, but I don't know. I don't know what global warming and climate crisis is doing to our usual calendar. So I guess everybody keep a hoodie ready.
I just feel like we definitely hit a bit of a gray streak here in the last month, and it's just kind of continuing through August.
I know. I see all the people who are ready for fall just jumping the gun, kind of like you. And I see it's about to get...
Jennifer, I put my sweater on today just for you. It's sweater weather today.
I know. I'm down to SPF 40. Same.
I still got a little sun mowing the grass last weekend, so we're still at peak vitamin D levels for now. I don't have to pull the supplement out of the medicine cabinet yet. And there's still plenty to do.
Yes, and we may get to that if we have time. Just you wait.
The first thing that everybody needs to do is go visit what's coming to the cover story this week that you and L.L. Kessner contributed to equally.
You know, this is so fun for me because it is a story about collaboration, and it was a collaborative process.
That was not lost on me.
Right? L.L. Kessner does such a great job looking at work, looking at art, and seeing history, seeing personalities, seeing all the kinds of layers and meaning and metaphor in work. And something that I appreciate about their stories every time we get to feature them is that I get a bunch of photos and I'm looking at the same art that they're writing about. And then when I look at it again, after I do my edit, my read through, it's a different experience. And I really appreciate they're bringing this to this story because Robert Benson, his professional name. You may have seen Bob Benson around. If you don't already know him from the Humboldt art scene, then any given Arts Alive night, you might see this rather tall, stately looking gentleman, usually with some sort of beadwork around his neck. And he is a stalwart of Humboldt County's art scene since back in the day. And he and his wife, Becky Evans, also a stalwart of the Humboldt art scene. You may recall her salmon installation at the Morris Graves Museum. It was sort of, the only way I can describe it is a hanging 3D collage where she took paper salmon that lots and lots of people contributed and hung them initially as a sort of a mourning and a talking about how all the salmon were being killed by the damming and everything else and climate change, and then brought it back for the removal of the dams and reinstalled it at the Morris graves to sort of celebrate that achievement. So both of them are artists who they've been together for 54 years. Yeah.
Amazing. And I love the backstory of
I know.
both of them. How they either, I mean, obviously Bob already was here, but her finding Humboldt County and the tidbits of like hearing about Humboldt County in the 70s.
Right? So they met in the 1970s or 1970 at Humboldt State University's art department during a very hippie, creative, flowy time, apparently. I love how Becky described to me that, yeah, it was like someone would be passing around a bag of wine and somebody might start dancing and somebody who wasn't the nude model might take off their clothes. And I'm like, wow, school was real different for me, but it sounds like it was a really wild time and a very creative time. And so they met there, and they were doing very different things, but they both are really committed to the land, to place, to nature. And where they kind of found their commonalities was when they started painting outdoors together in a plein air setting. And now, 54 years in, they still are constantly going out, and they will go to one of the sites that Bob monitors for his tribe, or they will go to any kind of natural setting. And he was saying to me that, you know, in that moment when they're setting out, he said it's very exciting and they feel like we're going to go find something. And I just love that people who, first of all, have been together for 54 years still want to work together. I don't know.
I also just have to pause and say the idea of a courtship that involves painting landscapes together.
It's pretty great.
That's pretty wonderful.
I know. They might be goals.
Yeah, goals.
But they are, for all the time they've spent going out and doing this kind of artistic practice of going out into very much the wilderness, going out into the mountains and observing and collecting and really letting the land tell them a story, really just being open to being receptive for whatever is out there in the world today. They haven't done something directly together before. They have been, as Bob put it, in the dugout for each other, for what they're doing. They have been working, talking through things, helping with last minute deadlines, doing that sort of thing when they have their separate shows. But they haven't done something where they've both really been hands-on making something together. And this show, Renewal, collaborations by Becky Evans and Robert Benson, is what Ella Kessner brought to me as like, let's cover this show, is really something. And it is both of their aesthetics, which is an interesting contrast to begin with. It's both of their aesthetics combined with the story of the monument fire and how it burned down this lookout structure on Ironside Mountain, which is called Senending. I think it's Senending by the Sunugwe people. I'm not probably doing that pronunciation justice, but the Senungwe people are Robert Benson's tribe, and he is a cultural representative for them. So when there is something happening on a sacred site, like, for example, this mountain, Ironside Mountain, let's say PG&E needs to put some power lines there, or CAL FIRE needs to set something up there, he goes and looks around and tries to determine if this is like a village site or something like that. He can do some survey work and determine it, and then they'll go from there. Do they need an archaeologist? Do they need to take other measures? Should they scrap it, etc.? So he does that work and also checks in on different sites. And after this fire, over the next couple years, he and Becky went back to it again and again and looked at the site, which had not yet been cleared by Forest Service, and looked at the debris, the things that were human made and destroyed and sort of brought back to their, as Ella Kessner puts it, back to the state of being a raw material, like glass that melted, metal that melted, ironically, lightning rods that were destroyed, things that a lightning started fire really transformed and destroyed. But they were also looking at, as the name renewal might hint, the way that the land sort of comes back. Little green sprouts that come up through the ash and the char. They looked at, for example, she talked about when the dam was removed, Ironside, that sort of, she put it as the bathtub ring of California poppies that was left behind from where the water dropped. It's all really interesting stuff in itself. Beautiful. She sent me all these gorgeous pictures, but it's also the land telling a story, telling its own history. And for Bob and Becky, these different objects, these different bits of debris that they discovered along their cleanup of this pretty toxic place in terms of, man-made materials that have burned and whatnot, all tell their own story. And she got really into the blobs of glass and things, and he was finding all these sort of rock shapes and metal shapes, and it's really interesting to see how these two people with such different aesthetics, and if you had asked me, okay, well, what's the difference between their work, I would have been like, it's like, I don't think I could have expressed it, but L.L. Kessner did such a great job. And if you can imagine what Kessner says about Becky's work, for example, is that things are like water. They are fluid, there's movement, there's a kind of a line in her work, like a drawing line, that is similar to water, similar to the changes and the shapes and whatnot. And then in his work, things are geometric, things are very strong and repeated shapes, patterns, a lot of influence from native iconography. And those things weave together too. And in this show, I really strongly recommend anybody going through and going and seeing this piece, because it has all kinds of duality in it, all sorts of human-made, nature-made, things that are destroyed, things that are coming back. And these are two people who are really just local icons of art in Humboldt County, and who are just at the top of their powers working together on a project that is about the earth. It's about creativity. I mean, they made a gorgeous piece out of an abandoned car door that they found on the mountain. And it's really, I think this is going to be one for the books, and one that people are going to be remembering and talking about for a long time.
I mean, I'm certain that the pictures only tell one story of how beautiful they are in person. Uh, But yes, for two folks to finally collab together after all this time, and I think the impetus is perfect that they talk about the sacral or sacred significance of this site, that people would go up there and come back down and feel like they were young again. I mean, that was even part of the title. That's kind of what a destruction and rebirth is all about as well. And I just think it was such a well done story to bring it to us and preview the installation.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see all of the work together when it's finally set up. It opens up this Saturday at the Morris Graves Museum of Art, and I will see you there, Tanya.
Yes, I'm really excited. Once upon a time, we used to have a contest here about recycled art, and I've always loved the idea of taking something that you would think is trash and making it into beauty again.
I have good news for you. If you were talking about the Junk Art Show, Junque, because it's
Yes.
sponsor, it is happening again. And I believe the Morris Graves Museum, if you go to their website, you can find out how to submit your own junk art. This might be your moment, Tanya.
I had a piece once upon a time get an honorable mention. I call it
What?
my Candelabra Apocalyptica.
Oh my God. How did I not know about this?
It's in my home. You will see it someday.
Fantastic. Oh, and we are getting in your business right now with the second half of
Oh,
this preview.
and this is where the host turns into the interviewee.
It's true. So, those of you at home who don't already know, Tanya, when not here hosting Access Humboldt shows, is also a registered vet tech. Yes, that's right. The person who has the hands on time with your pet more than anybody else at the vet clinic. So, Tanya is a registered vet tech with more than 30 years of experience, emergency care, critical care. And while she is no longer on the floor in scrubs, she is in doing courses online and in person, I think, for veterinarians worldwide. So telling
Yes.
vets what to do.
No, it's the fact that almost any medical profession, whether veterinary or human, you have to continue your education. And every state has a certain amount of credit hours you have to achieve each year to keep your license in good standing. And I am fortunate enough that I was able to retire from the backbreaking efforts of floor work to creating that content for everybody.
And Tanya has very graciously shared her pet wisdom with us over the years. This time, there is controversy.
It's a little bit of a controversial topic, indeed.
It is, you would not think, if you are not a pet owner, you might not know how much controversy there is with walking your dog.
Yes, and I think I commented to you that this, of all three articles that I've contributed to the journal, this was the most cathartic.
So tell me, what was the catharsis for you? What were the things you needed to get off your chest?
I think, overall, in this area, in any area, when you're a dog owner, um, there are going to be interactions that are positive and negative when you're taking your four-legged friend out, especially in other socializing areas such as an off-leash dog park or an on-leash trail. And I just wanted to gather up a lot of the interactions, more specifically in the 5 years that I've been back in this area, compare and contrast to my first time living here, and then just trying to give people some of what works for me to keep the vibe positive and to keep the interaction for if you're especially in the veterinary profession, you always have what we call a pet with idiosyncrasies sometimes or special. They have special needs, and to keep them in a positive groove and yourself, I just wanted to share some things about this area that you might want to consider with your pet. Especially for those folks that maybe just got a puppy this past spring and now they're venturing out here in the fog.
Well,
And oh, go ahead.
I was surprised. I did not know about leash aggression.
Yeah.
I thought that if you have a dog that has a little bit of aggression, you put it on a leash.
It's true, but sometimes in the wiring of a pup's brain, the leash creates a territory, and then that expresses itself in an aggression that you don't see when they're not on a lead. And so that makes things complicated sometimes. And it's all about if you can know your pet's personality, if you've done the training and you still kind of say, well, they still have some issues with X, Y, or Z, then the best thing you can do is take that on the road at places that are going to work for you and your pet, and not come across with already putting yourself in a situation where you're probably going to have some kind of conflict.
I did notice when it comes to conflict, even when it's something where I'm not saying there's shade, but I did notice some shade. I noticed that at one point, Tanya says, I would never have ridden my horses through an off leash dog park, but that's me.
For all of the folks in McKinleyville in the past, I would say it was about 2 years ago, there was a bit of a contravesty that 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 changed the whole way that people go to Hiller Park. It went
Oh.
from an off-leash dog park to now it's quite confusing where
Mm-hmm.
you can and can't be off leash. And it all began with folks um, totally entitled to ride their horses through the park, but it
Setting some dogs
really
off.
it really was. And I grew up with horses, so I've kind of reached back out to other folks that I know that either currently have or have had horses in their life, and I'm like, all right, am I the jerk here, or is this just not a good idea?
But I noticed that along with giving some good recommendations about where to be on leash, where to be off leash with your dog, and places that are good depending on your dog's temperament, I also noticed that you believe in, shall we say, turning the other leash.
Absolutely. And some of those stories that I brought into that part of the article were not necessarily my personal experiences, but things that I have seen with other folks interacting in the dog parks. And I mean, there's just no reason for it. Usually when you're taking your pup out, you're trying to have a good day. You're trying to maybe relax and relieve stress. And so it's always kind of been, as I've gotten older and wiser and more calm, why start drama? Just pack it in and go on down the road. There's another dog park, there's another trail. Why have a bad vibe? Why have a bad day?
That's true. I mean, staying to argue with someone about how they manage their dog or staying to grimace and be tense, which your dog is going to feel too,
Absolutely.
doesn't seem like a good way to spend your one wild and precious life. And it sounds like you and your dog might have a better time going someplace where the vibe is good.
And those interactions when your dog feels your tension, when they see a bad interaction, they're going to remember those situations, and it's
Hmm.
only going to lead to possible more conflict in that similar situation in the future.
This is just like when I go out. There's some places you just can't take me, Tanya.
I would definitely say there's some places that nobody needs to take me either. But I encourage everybody to read the article with an open mind and hopefully, not get their hackles up, and hopefully it just comes across like some great advice and some great common sense, especially as this area grows in size and population.
Very true. Very true.
And with that, that is our time for this week. The current edition of the North Coast Journal will be available on newsstands tomorrow. Pick up your copy, read it cover to cover, check the calendar for all the comings and goings. And of course, you can also find it 24/7 at northcoastjournal.com. My name is Tanya Shrum. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for Jennifer joining us. And thanks to everybody for staying informed and supportive here on the North Coast.